As we center in, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart center, placing one hand over your heart and the other palm over that. And feel the rhythm of your heart beating. Feel the rhythm of your breath as it ebbs and flows, fills and releases. Your heart and your breath keep you alive without any control from you. Like the grace that is before us and within us, that we express through us, it is as present as our beating heart and our breath. My thought becomes my word. My word becomes my step. My step becomes my pathway. Led by grace. Led home to God within. Let that gift of your beating heart remind you of the love that you are. And feel that love radiating through every cell of your being. Radiating beyond the boundary of your physical self. Vibrating out into the world. And coming back to you. Our destination is God. Our destination is love. And if we don't go ahead of grace, but go with grace, our destination is in us. Like the mythical vision of Ithaca that Dave shared. It's with us always. So deepen your breath, deepen your awareness. Come into this now. And with your grace, I need to not be wearing shoes. I need to be grounded on this ground. Thank you. Beloved child of God, the angels sang on the day you were born. Beloved child of God, the angels sang on the day that you were born. I borrowed that phrase from one of the spiritual teachers who spoke yesterday at the commencement of the 2023 One Spirit commencement, where our beautiful sister Heather Diddell and her classmates stepped into the liminal space of an ending that is a beginning and a beginning that is an ending. And for me, it was an echo of my own ordination in 2016 and my commencement that brought me here. And there are many echoes of traveling with an open heart that yesterday reminded me of. But that refrain, the angels sang as you were born, was meant not just for Jesus in a manger, but it is meant for each of us. So in that starting point of remembering that we are beloved of God, that we are created of love, the invitation to travel with an open heart was one of the landing places for me in a chapter of the Four Agreements that I found a little challenging. Don't take anything personally. Don't take the praise personally. Don't take the criticism personally. You are never responsible. This is Don Miguel's word. You are never responsible for the actions of others. You are only responsible for you. When you understand this and refuse to take things personally, you can hardly be hurt by the careless comments or actions of others. If you keep this agreement, you can travel around the world with your heart completely open, and no one can hurt you. You can choose to follow your heart always. So in the chapter, it talks about all the tiny little agreements we make with ourselves and with the people that we are living in relationship with. The little slights, the big slights. What does it mean to not take things personally? And if I'm trying to stay out of the negative of don't, what does it mean that I do? And there were things in that chapter that I pushed against, and there were things that resonated. Rosemary gave an entry point into the wisdom of what does it mean to travel with an open heart, to lead from the heart. So with permission, I'm pointing to Rosemary. Those of you at home, Rosemary is here in this space. Rosemary's comment was that the heart is always in the now. And that is how we can know that we're leading and living from our heart. When we're living in and with our minds and that programming, those voices A couple of us mentioned the roommates that we learned about with Michael Singer. Might have had a lot of things to say about that. But those voices, even if they're in our own minds, the debris, the agreements that we make that drive our thoughts and our words and our steps and our pathway, if those thoughts are of fear, or our thoughts are spinning us into the past or spinning us into the future with worry, we are not in the now. And it is very difficult, I would say impossible, to live from our heart if we're in that space. So when we live from our hearts, we're in the now. We're in that place, as Rosemary reminded us that night, of love and light, where the voices of those inner roommates pipe down a little. We're in that moment. We are just as we are, and the moment is just as it is, with no need to fix it, no need to control it, no need to change it. But we are human. And it is very difficult. I don't know about you, but it is very difficult for me to stay in that space of now. So praise or criticism may or may not reflect our essence. Somebody may say, thank you for doing this thing, and it touches our heart because we know that that action we did, we feel like it stemmed from our very being. It's lovely to be recognized in that way. We also, I think, sometimes need someone else's voice to remind us. I know I sometimes need reminders to say, you're drifting off your path. That doesn't feel like your essence. Can you come home to you? I have people in my life who love me enough to be that voice that says, come home to you. You're drifting. And yet the truth of it is, beyond that, beyond our actions, beyond our presence, how we look, how we show up, at the core of us is the core of us, that divine essence, that we are in communion with God within, and we bring that to our community, that reminder, that infinity loop. But the core is listening to the divine essence that we are. Simply that we are. And we forget. So last week, after the service, Pete sent me a couple of screenshots from Instagram, and a psychologist and teacher of unshaming named David Bedrick. And it was looking at the 4 agreements with a yes and. So here is one of my yes ands from that. Because he says about agreement too, do not take anything personally, but then there's this shadow side of it. Everything is political and personal. Stand for your reactions and activist sensibilities. And what if healing isn't growing or changing ourselves, but what if healing simply means coming out more and more as ourselves? So how those two things wove in my heart, because I did a little bit of a going down the rabbit hole of reading some of, and I'll post this, David Bedrick's teaching. One of the reasons we have a pride parade is because people were unafraid to stand in their truth. Every one of those changes that we see in our society over time comes because people are unafraid, or they're afraid and they do it anyways, to stand in the truth that if we are beloved of God, we are called to bring peace and justice and mercy and equity to all. We've talked here over time about sacred activism. Standing in that truth that if we are beloved children of God, we've done our own spiritual work. We recognize that our thought becomes our word, becomes our step, becomes our pathway, and so we do our utmost to keep that pathway clean. To look at when we are triggered by somebody pushing our buttons as though it is them and not something in us. Or just recognizing, oh, here's a moment where I have not come out from the best part of me that is my essence. I've come from a wounded place. And to still see ourselves with compassion. We hold the destination that is always within us in our sight, but we forget and we let it get covered over again. So as healing, if it means that we come out more and more as ourselves, those things that cause us to forget, hopefully over time, we rely on those less and less. And we find those practices, those habits of mind and heart that keep us centered in the now, that keep us centered in love, standing in love. Rob recently sent out an email to our friends who were able to take part in the retreat that we had at the end of April. And in the kind of reminders from this email thread of what it was to connect heart to heart in that deeper level, I'm going to share Diane Davis Schneider's words because it also feels really fitting on this Pride Day. Yes, each of us is uniquely packaged. However, beyond the packaging, the spirit is the same. How wonderful to realize each individual truly is God's gift to the world. May my motivations be pure and my intentions clear. Whatever I do, may it be with deep love for myself and all others. May I listen closely to that voice from the wise heart. It's a beautiful prayer for each of us to remember. We are God's gift to the world. We are exactly what this moment needs of us. Whatever pain we come to, whatever those wounds that invite us to pack in our essence for protection, ultimately the protection is futile. We are called to remember that in the not going ahead of grace, we quietly live in our ordinary moments, our moments of now, beyond our expectations of ourselves, beyond our expectations of anybody in our lives. We're coming out as beloved children of God. So hear again the words of the daily word. And Dave, you so beautifully gave me credit for that idea of grace. But it is from my friend Judy, who has a plaque on her wall and over the years reminds herself and me, don't go ahead of grace. Grace, the guiding, healing, harmonizing presence and power of God, is everywhere present. Divine grace is mine whenever I say yes to this presence within me. I release any thought that I am unworthy of grace. Hear that one again. I release any thought that I am unworthy of grace. Nothing I could do or fail to do would ever disturb my divine identity. Grace need not be earned, nor can it be bought. It is inexhaustible. No matter how much comes my way, I can relax in complete trust that even more will be available as I need it. Grace doesn't happen to me. It expresses through me. Just as I have been blessed to receive grace when I have needed it, I am honored to be the conduit through which it flows to someone else, blessing them in a time of need. Yesterday, landing in the beauty of a commencement ceremony that recognizes with reverence the wisdom paths found around the world. To land in what we fondly call the mothership of one spirit, and to see friends that I graduated with, and to know complete strangers as sisters and brothers. To know that in that space, it fed me to be mirrors to you. And as we recognized a class of graduates who are going forth in the world to show up as love, it reminded me once again that that is our call. That's all we are called to do. We are ordained, each of us, because the angels sang at our birth. We are called to listen, to come out of the closet and be love. May it be so, and so it is. Amen.